Hey. All right, everyone, welcome. Today, I am very excited to have Teresa Thomas on. Teresa Thomas, I know her through a networking group here in Minnesota. And what's awesome about Teresa is really focused on helping people create connections in their life with networking for business and just personally as well. And so I thought it'd be so fun to have her come on here and talk about how you can get out there in the world and do networking in a myriad of different ways, even when you're not inherently outgoing and you're not inherently like wanting to be in everybody's face. How can you get out there, network, put your face out there, get your needs like out into the world so that other people can say, oh, I have a connection here and I have a connection there. So Teresa's just really passionate about this. She's really fun. And she's always looking to make sure that people find what they need in this world. So, Teresa, it's so great to have you on. Can you just add anything about, who you are and what you do that you want everybody to be aware of?
Absolutely. So, as Mary shared in that great introduction, thank you. I'm all about connecting people, possibilities, and purpose. So, that's what I've been doing for most of my adult life in some shape or form. And we all have a drive, whether it's something that we pursue professionally or personally, but something that lights us up. And for me, it's making those connections that gives me a sense of purpose and drive. So, if you are thinking like, okay, I'm somebody who networks for a living and connects people, that I must be really naturally outgoing and really extroverted, I will tell you that that is not the case at all. In fact, growing up, I was extremely shy, like off the charts shy. And I was very nervous to meet new people. And I actually hid in a closet once when my parents had some friends over and they didn't leave for a couple of hours. So that was my lesson that I needed to be more engaged so that I wouldn't have to go through an experience like that again. And also, another thing I would say, so all these things about connection and networking are all things that I've learned and applied through observation, trial and error, and strengthening that muscle. The other thing I'll share that may help you to relate to where you are in terms of where I'm coming from with the connection is I'm an ambivert. So some of you may have heard that term before, but we talk a lot about extroverts and introverts. And every time that I do the Myers-Briggs that scale, I'm always right in the middle. So I definitely get energy from other people, but I need to refuel with lots of time by myself. So that's a little bit about kind of where I come from as a connector. And I think what makes it really, when we look at our why, I think why it's so important is that to me, it really matters that people feel valued for who they are as individuals, and that fostering connection can help people show up as their true selves and find their journey and feels fulfilling to them and less alone on it. I can't hear you, Mary.
I
I don't
think
know.
I agree. I think it's really important for others to feel like they're able to make those connections, especially right now, when most of us are quarantined. I'm quarantined again with everyone. You may hear them. So I'm trying to keep myself muted when I am not speaking. So I think that that's really a key piece. And so one of the things that I've always found really delightful about you, Teresa, is how you really, this creating connections for you, it is just part of who you are. But even though it's just part of who you are, you've also tried to keep honing the skill. And
Mhm.
so, and then also teaching others and helping share so that they can use the tools that are just kind of innate to you. So, what are some of the basics? Like, if I'm trying to get out there in whatever it is, whether it's networking, looking for a position, like a job, if it's maybe trying to find like, I want to go back to school, but I don't know what to go to school for. Or if it's, I want to find something I'm really passionate about and I'm feeling like I need some creative outlets. Like, you're always listening, right? You're always paying attention. So can you give some recommendations on how to be listening so you can help others, but also like how can you share so you don't feel like you're being full of yourself, but you're actually putting the information out into the world so that somebody might have the answers or point you in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. So, my number one tip would be to know why you're networking, and that changes day to day. It changes depending on what you've got going on in your life, what your goals are. But when you know why you are networking, why you're choosing, everything else starts to fall into place. So, if you can imagine that you're in career search mode, then you would want to share something like what you ideally want for your career. People a lot of times will make the mistake of sharing what wasn't the ideal part of the career that they're trying to move away from. And guess what happens? People hear what you share and then they give you leads for exactly the thing that you're trying to move away from. So when you get focused on this is where I'm going, then it makes it so that you're more clear about sharing why you're networking, what you want to share in your introduction, and then the other things fall into place. I will say that online networking has really helped that, because in online networking, we're able to get to the point more quickly than sometimes we do in in-person networking. So in in-person networking, I coach people to try to get right to the point. And sometimes how that works is to ask the other person what you want to be asked. So if you could say, hey, what brought you here today? Or what do you most hope happens from this event? Or, what types of connections are you hoping to make? Then you can turn it back on yourself and say, oh, I'm here because, or I'm hoping to meet, or I'm looking at this as a next step, so that you can get right on task. But yeah, with online networking, it's really nice because it's a combination of sometimes we're on video, sometimes we're typing to each other on LinkedIn or in the chat on a Zoom. But we get more to the point and we feel less pulled to talk about the weather or the bad traffic we had. It's so there's beauty in that part.
I really like that. Yeah. Yeah. It especially if you don't know Minnesotans. Minnesotans are kind of notorious for talking about things that have nothing to do with anything. And so it takes a little while to get to the meat of the matter. And so I do appreciate that sometimes you can just be more direct. And I think that's a great nugget. Like ask what you are hoping somebody else will ask you. I was thinking about that as you said that. I think I do that a lot, I'm pretty sure. But so it might be just more innate, but it isn't going to be innate for everyone. And so it's just great to say, okay, I'm going to ask somebody what I want them to ask me about. How simple is that? It's ridiculously simple.
Yeah, here's another little secret tip. Um, Always try to get the other person to talk about themselves first, because when they do that, then you're just responding to them in a way that's relevant, and it immediately tells you something about that person so that you know what you would share that would relate. So sometimes you might think you're networking about one particular goal, but you meet somebody who is in a different part, could serve a different goal that you have, that like is a delightful surprise. And then you can immediately adjust how you talk with that person to be about this other goal that is a better fit. So yeah, so that's a tip. And then if you're wondering how you would go about that just right away, just ask the person something like, hey, what brought you here? Or whatever that question is you want to be asked. And sometimes it doesn't always work. So if you end up getting asked first, keep it kind of general. Like don't go into too much nitty gritty, but just enough to share a little bit about what you do, but just say, hey, but I would like to know about what you do too. And then once you know, then you can go deeper into your conversation.
I agree. I feel like people are going to be way more receptive if you've actually shown interest, right? I feel like
Right.
whenever you go into a networking situation and it's purely networking, especially if it's business related or job search related, it's like people will go and you can kind of feel that they like if you don't serve the purpose. I used to do this with my husband. He would be going to these legal events because he was in law school. And then they'd say, "What do you do?" And I'd say, I do IT consulting or I do health and wellness. And it was like glossed over. I'm
Mhm.
out. I'm not even remotely interested in talking to you. And it was just like, okay, well, this is no fun. Like, so being actually interested in the person and finding out what they're all about is really important. Can you share? You're gonna have to hold on a second, okay? So, can you share with us any other recommendations about how to be a good active listener? Because part of it is to create the connection. You have to not just be sitting there and letting the person talk to you. You have to actually be absorbing what they're sharing, and you know be actually a conduit of, well, maybe my learning this information is going to be important for me to help share with others. So how can I do that, right? So could you just speak to that a little bit? Because I think we all get kind of hung up on, I need this to serve my purpose.
Mhm.
And then you're kind of missing the point and losing out possibly.
Yeah, that ties in really well with what we were just talking about too. So I think one of the things that gets in the way of being an active listener is, and having that connection is, people get really caught up in the specifics of what they're going to say. So there's a whole lot of layers here. So one layer, when I was talking about being shy, for example, shy is fear of judgment, right? So if you're starting to feel shy, you're concerned about, oh, I have to say this thing and it's got to be perfect. But okay, we're going to just erase that right now, because nobody knows what you were going to say. And if you show interest in the other person first, that automatically forms a stronger connection for you to build on. So don't worry if you say something differently than you thought you would. It's all okay. The other thing is, it's going to serve you better to be an active listener. So realize that the more relevant you are in your conversations, the more memorable you're going to be, the deeper the connection, the more likely you're going to want to help each other. So those things make a big difference. The other thing is, when we're nervous and our confidence is wary, some of us talk too much. Some of us get so caught up in our head that we aren't able to listen. So the thing, I use these confidence tips and hacks on myself all the time, because it's something that I've worked on my whole life. Before I do any networking, I try to get myself grounded and centered. I try to make sure that I'm not rushing, that I don't have, that it's not a really horrible time of day for me. For example, I am not the best networker at 7 in the morning. I do it if I have to, but I don't show up as my best self unless I put a lot of effort into it. Um, so yeah, think about those things that can help you feel more confident. So even, people have been talking a lot about the Amy Cuddy power pose, making sure that you stand confidently. Even though we're online networking, I'm in my office, something that helps me feel confident is I'm actually sitting on a old fashioned dictionary right now, so that I'm centered. I know that my screen is where I want it to be. I'm not worried about what my background looks like, because I've pre-thought out some things like that. So the more you can do to be confident helps you to be less in your head with those gears spinning and worried, and more present and with the other person, and being able to be an active listener. So there's actually a lot to it, but those are some simple things to keep in mind.
When we were talking before this segment, like you had mentioned about these confidence hacks, right?
Hmm.
And when you come across as confident, you automatically are bringing something to the conversation and to that other person without even realizing it, right? You're allowing them to come up to your level, to feel at ease. Like there's something about bringing in the confidence that doesn't just help you and serve you, it serves the conversation. And I think
Hmm.
a lot of us forget that because we are so much in our heads and we're worried about what's going to happen. And so I appreciate that. So I know you mentioned this in more detail, but can you kind of speak a little bit more to this about how when you show up confidently, it can actually really help the whole conversation?
Yeah, another thing that I can say about that is, one thing I constantly tell myself, whether it's networking, meeting somebody new, or giving a presentation. So when those nerves start acting up, I remind myself that I'm there to be a resource. And I might not be able to have all the answers right on the spot, which I think is what gets people nervous sometimes, but it's okay because if you can be responsive, even if it's, oh, that's really got me thinking. I'm going to need to get back to you on that. Or, oh, I was thinking that there is this great resource and I can't recall the name of it right now. Um, and introductions, they're all just part of starting a conversation and seeing if that relationship is going to develop any further. We've got wide relationships and deep relationships, and all are good for their own reasons. But if we focus on how we're connecting and being present and avoiding some of those nerves, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, something that just that you mentioned and made me think of this. So, having these wide and then having these deep relationships, I think that a lot of us have no idea how to really just ask for what we need. Like,
Hmm.
and so this idea of bringing your why in when you go networking is really important. But can you speak to this idea of, you know, it's kind of scary to say, I am looking for a job that is like this. And you're like speaking up, using your voice, sharing what you desire. And there's something that can be a little scary about that because then there's the whole like, can I really do that job? Or should I really be going into that field? Or, there's probably a lot of other pent up things. But can you speak to this idea of going out there and asking for what you want and just trusting that somebody out there is going to have some answers for you or point you in the right direction or is like really excited for you and wants this for you. And it is so important for you to be able to do that. So, could you just speak in some way about that aspect of networking, whether it's with family, friends, or with the outside world?
Yeah, and then this also has a lot of layers to it. So when you added the part family, friends, those are a little bit different layers. So like at a family function or friends, you probably wouldn't come necessarily with, seeking a job at your forefront, but you would include it in the conversation. So, if grandma, well, you can't see grandma right now, but if we're Zooming with grandma and she asks you how you are, maybe in those situations, it's more the niceties and the family stuff. And then like, hey, grandma, I'm, I'm in job mode. Do you have any, friends that might be a good connection for me to talk to? Like you can bring it up in a different way. If you're doing more like business oriented networking, I've been lectured on this myself. And it's partly maybe being a woman, maybe being a Minnesotan, maybe just being a highly sensitive person, whatever it is. A lot of us put so much into wanting to serve another that we forget how to serve ourselves. So I'm grateful that there was a lawyer many years ago who said, you know what, Teresa, she didn't use the word reciprocal relationships, but I've been thinking about this more since then, is she said, you're always asking, what can I do for you? How can I help you? What kinds of connections are you looking for? But you don't tell us what you need. And if you don't tell us what you need, the relationship doesn't feel very balanced and equal. And I never thought about it that before. Like, oh, it kind of broke my heart. Like, oh, I I thought I was fostering these like, you know, relationships that, the energy was swirling and really good. And when she said that, I'm like, you're right. Because when I meet somebody and they don't tell me what they need or how I can be helpful to them, I don't reveal as much. I don't share as much because I'm like, well, I don't want to keep talking about myself. Let's have this be two ways. So, if there's something like that that holds you back, realize that you're actually doing the conversation and the other person a service by saying what you want too, and then it invites them to share what they want, and it's part of going beyond that initial layer. I'm not gonna say that every connection you make is going to be, stellar and great, but these are tips that help you to find those connections that will be helpful. And I do want to say one thing about wide relationships. And sometimes people dismiss wide relationships. You talked about going to, some business functions with your husband and feeling like people wrote you off. They don't know what you're going to do in the future. They don't know who you're connected with. They don't know what kind of influence you. They know nothing about you. They don't know if you happen to be friends with their best friend. So they've made huge assumptions. So what they've missed out on is the possibility to have a wide connection. And a wide connection might be as simple as, oh, I met, his wife and we had a great connection and just leave it at that. Or it could be a LinkedIn connection that you're not exactly sure, like, yeah, you're a nice person, but let's connect in that soft way. And sometimes over time, the possibilities start coming together and you start seeing like, oh, there wasn't the right connection then, but now there is. So, for example, the way that I use wide connections might be useful to other people is because I network for a living, I meet a lot of people and I don't always know, where the next step could be. But when I invite them to uh, connect with me on LinkedIn, then if they're posting, then I see that keeps them top of mind. And then I might see an opportunity, like somebody I barely knew was looking for a job. And then the next day I saw a job that fit what she was looking for. And I was able to be helpful to her because this wide connection. And so it's a way of staying relevant and maybe, and it's not a tit for tat type of thing, but maybe that person down the road, if she sees something that's helpful and relevant to me, that will come back or not. And but those wide connections, I don't mean that you have to connect with everybody, but it is a nice way to set a platform that things can build on in a really, really easy way that just takes moments to do.
Yeah, and I love that you're just sort of reminding everyone that it could be really important, right? Like I don't know about you and your experience, but I think you have experience in this from what I remember. But in college, I was so gung ho about getting a job. I used every single possible resource available. I hung out with, everybody, but generally, and my jobs have always let's see. My jobs have always come from me. Like I have found them and I got the job from that. But most of the people that I know, that's not how they got their job. They got their job because of someone they know, and I can't stress enough that that's so important to let people know what you need and what you're looking for because it seems as though when you have that connection, the person who's looking for the job, to fill the position or whatever, they're just more receptive to hearing somebody else say, "Oh, I've got this great person in mind for you." I mean, obviously they might not know this or this, but they know these other things. They'll be able to learn it. They've already given you like you can actually go into the interview and just talk about what you are able to do and what you are able to like move into versus I don't have that. I don't know that I can apply for that job or I don't have that. They might not want to hire me. Like it actually opens, I would say, probably a lot of more possibility.
It does open a lot of possibilities, and there's actually research with gender about how women and men apply for jobs and realize whether they are capable of fulfilling the responsibilities or not. And I don't have the percentages ahead of me, but women in general will look at a list of qualifications and even if they're really like capable will think like, oh, I didn't have that, I'm only like 95% there, or and a lot of men, I know I'm totally generalizing,
I
but
know.
but a lot
It's
of men will
okay.
look at it and be like, oh, I've got like 40% of those, I'm good. And it's just interesting the way that we look at these things. So you're right, that personal connection. And the other thing is sometimes we dismiss our skills and we put like we think, oh, that's no big deal, that's not really a strength, but the people around us see this. So if we have a connection that works there and we're like, well, I kind of know that. And they're like, no, you totally know that more than anyone that I
Right.
know, and you would be the right fit. So our connections are our allies, our support system, our cheerleaders. It helps us to see what's possible, those uplifting connections anyway. Um, so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's kind of funny because I feel like so many people I know, that is exactly how they get the position. And so when I'm talking with people who aren't thinking about letting their network know or just letting anybody that they know what they're like looking for, I always try to remind them, well, did you just tell everyone you know? They might know someone. And it's just surprising because we think we have to always get something with a job search. At least I think a lot of us think, well, we have to hit all this the the requirements, right? We've got to fill out the cover letter. We've got to get that resume exactly perfect. We have to, and some of that ends up not mattering if you know the right people and they get you in there. And I think that it's a huge resource that many of us need to tap into instead of just feeling like, okay, I have to redo everything and make it perfect for whatever. So I think that's really, really exciting and interesting that you say that generally men will say, yeah, I can do that job. And they don't have any of the skills. Not any, that's not true. They just aren't quite, filling and checking off every single dot in the job description. And I think so many women discount all of their amazing gifts because, like you said, some things you don't even realize that you're doing really well, right? So that's why I think these personality tests are so fun and can really give you a lot versus just you. I think a lot of us, what we do is we take these tests like the Strengths Finder, we take the tests like the Myers-Briggs, and you just go, well, yeah. And you don't realize, no, wait, those are gifts.
Right.
And like, so let's sink into your gifts and let's realize how important they are and actually like talk about them because we don't think to talk about them because it's just who we are. It's just how we operate. It's what we do. But like if you have
Yeah.
those gifts and other people don't, they're like, oh, if I only had someone to work with that did this, or if I only found like somebody's looking for a partner, I'm looking for somebody who wants to do this or this. Like, oh, I know someone like that.
Yeah, and people can't help you if they don't know. So yeah, so ask, and sometimes it's embarrassing or it feels weird, but it's part of life. It's how we help each other out. Yeah, as we were talking, I was realizing, we were talking about like, oh, maybe it's gender, maybe it's, where you grew up, all these different things. But it also, like, I guess when you look at it, it all boils down to confidence. And so, like you said, the more confident you are, and sometimes we have to, sometimes we have to trick ourselves into having a sense of confidence. The more things open up for us and the more we can step in and the more we can be who we really want to be and using our skills and connecting with people that we want to connect with. So yeah, so my advice is to not shy away from stepping into your confidence and what you want. And
Yeah.
I say that for everybody but myself too. I have to hear that every day.
Right? I know.
Right.
I know. I think people think that when you do a job like that, right, that you obviously have everything, but it's like, yep, we have to keep doing this too. So
Yeah.
we have a couple comments.
Okay.
And so one of them was that this whole thing is sort of top of mind. And when they were more involved in their legal community, because they're a paralegal at a big firm, the president of the professional organization, I was constantly meeting people at functions and was the go-to person for connecting people. She said that active listening was critical so I could make sure I was connecting the right people and turned out to be helpful for me on a professional level when I needed to get answers when performing my job.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, and many times the people that I met, I was trying to help them get connected, ended up helping me on a personal and professional level, right? And then another comment, I was lucky at that time as most of my professional contacts all felt the same way. We were a small group that each knew a ton of people and relied on each other and shared our contacts with each other. And we totally took advantage of that without any shame.
Good, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad we're helping each other out.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that I think we should just reiterate, and you mentioned this already, like when you go into a networking situation or you're meeting new people, you go to like a dinner party, or not that we're doing that these days, but you go and you do something and there's other people you don't know involved. If you're allowing yourself to just look at it as, oh, this is just a place where I get to meet new people and learn about them and use it as like this resource detective finding and just lodging some of that information in the back of your head, you just never know what the possibilities are.
Oh my gosh. I mean, more often than not, um, when we open ourselves up to new possibilities, there are things that happen that we couldn't have imagined that come together in a different way, or sometimes even a way better way than we had imagined. So, yeah, opening yourself up to that, it makes a big difference. And a lot of that is meeting new people.
Yeah. So what are your tips? Like, let's say that you are an introvert
Hmm.
and meeting new people has been difficult for you because let's say that the energy taxation of it all, right? The energy taxation of it all. So instead of meeting new people, I'm not going to do it. What would your recommendation be to people that feel like it's just a lot and I don't want to have to deal with it? Like, how can
Yeah.
they conserve their energy while attempting to do this?
Yeah. I can say a couple things about that. One, these are your times. So, like, really getting really good at the online networking, and you probably already are good at it, is going to serve you well. I also don't feel like there's one cookie cutter approach to networking. So, networking is not always called networking. So, networking doesn't have to be called a networking event. Because I have that introverted side of me, I'm very purposeful. I don't like just showing up and chit-chatting. Like, I I wanna know, like, why are you here? What motivates you? What interests you? Let's have a real conversation. Um, and so the things I do for networking, and now it's online, is I'm drawn to things that I want to learn, because then I'm already serving a primary goal of something I wanna learn. And like, guess what? Who goes to those things? People that also want to learn the same thing. Makes it easier for us to talk. It gives us that purposeful conversation. And we often have something in common beyond that because we have similar interests. So that's what I like doing. So, for example, I just did a speakers summit, an online speaker summit, and it was super interesting. It was all online. I mean, you could choose to just listen, or you could be, chatting. You could be private chatting. We had breakout sessions and got to meet each other. And what I loved was not all the networking happened during the event because we were listening to the speaker, but I got a little sense of what people were like when they were there, like the kinds of things they would chat about, or seeing how they describe themselves. And then guess what? I've got it's just the beginning of a conversation. So then I follow up with them on LinkedIn and say, this is what I noticed that you wrote about that was interesting to me. I'd like to stay connected. Um, and I've got great connections from all over the world from that. That Yeah, I've got some meetings coming up that I don't really know where they're going, like these specific connections, other than all the people that I'm meeting with, we're all speakers and we're all interested in growing our platform. And so I know that I'm going to walk away with some new tips because we'll be sharing some best practices. But the exciting part is, then what? You know, um, it's fun. I look at it kind of as a not a game, but I look for the joy in it.
Mhm. I appreciate that because you kind of opened it up with like some networking events aren't networking events. And just remind it, like if you go and you take a cooking class, you go and you decide you want to learn paddle boarding, you go and you're going on some sort of experience, like all of these things, you could be meeting new people, right? You just have to allow yourself to go out on a limb and say, hey, what brings you to this class? Like,
Hmm.
have you done this before? And then just seeing where the conversation goes, if it goes anywhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I really appreciate that because I don't think of myself as a networking person. Like, I don't like, I know that this shocks people, but like, I don't want to go to networking events. I don't want to, I don't know what to say. And people are always like, what? Because I'm a talker, right? You know. And so, but it's like, if you just take the pressure off and just allow it to be a conversation and allow yourself to be in service and then also allow yourself to say what you need, it can just take the pressure off and you can enjoy yourself in a myriad of ways and meet people.
Yeah. And even what you're doing, Mary, is networking by hosting these lunch conversations. You are, um, it's a higher level approach to networking, but you are magnetizing people that already see that there's a good connection to you. They're getting a sense of you and seeing if they want to continue the conversation or continue working with you. So this is a way of networking that a lot of people don't think of. So that's when I say, like, look at your goals and then figure out how to best serve your goals, because that will help you identify, where you connect with people. And maybe take the word networking out. Like if
Yeah.
networking feels like a loaded word, just like
Yeah.
what kinds of connections are you looking for? What kinds of connections are you hoping to make for yourself and be part of?
Yeah. That's awesome. So, is there anything else that you would want to like give people as a tidbit to networking or creating connections or feeling more confident? Anything you'd like to remind everyone or add, like anything we haven't discussed that you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, a couple things. This year in particular has been very challenging. So remind yourself, if you're struggling with confidence, that you're not in it alone. Even if we weren't dealing with COVID and the social challenges of this year, um, when I have given networking presentations, people publicly or privately, almost everybody shares that they have nerves about it, that there are things that they get concerned about, and they don't feel confident about. So you're not in it alone. Um, Humans are wired to be connected to each other, but we also want to make sure that we're safe and that this is going to be feel good and be mutually beneficial and all those things. So yeah, that just realize that you're not in it alone. And then the main things I would say are think about what your goals are. So you don't have to be super strict about it, but if you're going to sign up for something, even just in your mind, think about like, oh, why did I sign up for that? What am I hoping? Well, how will I introduce myself? That makes a big difference. And also start paying attention to what doesn't work. If there's something that you just feel like, well, everybody says I should do this, I should keep going. If it doesn't work for you, maybe that's not the right way for you to be networking. And there are lots and lots of different ways. Um, I have lots of next step links I could
Yeah.
share I won't do it here because but when you post this, I can chat some links. So like, for example, I'm doing a session. Well, tomorrow we're doing speed networking, which introverts and extroverts love because it's guided and start time and end time and guidance. I'll put that in the chat. And then tomorrow night, I'm doing a 50 fun things that's customized for confidence hacks. So we're going to do group think and sharing different confidence hacks. That's with Modern Well. I'll post that link. So if you're looking like, okay, I need some tips and tricks for that. And then I've got some 50 fun things events coming up. So lots and lots of different things,
So,
ways to practice connecting with joy and fun and
yeah,
confidence.
tell us about 50 fun things because this is something that you've started and no one knows, nobody that, let's just say nobody knows about this.
Um, Well, 50 Fun Things changes lives. It changed mine. I designed it specifically because how's that for speaking confidently? But it's true. Like, oh my gosh, I designed 50 Fun Things because I didn't like the direction that my life is going. I was starting to feel overwhelmed. And I'm like, my 50th birthday was approaching. And I'm like, okay, people want me to have a party. So I made these little worksheets and I decided to put 50 things I wanted to experience. And all of a sudden, my connections got stronger. I started feeling more hopeful, more joy. And then this year, I've been doing these workshops, I've been doing them around the world. And then I was feeling really hopeful that I was going to have more impact. I was going to be doing retreats all over the world. And then COVID's like, no, you're going to have impact, in a different way right now. And it's going to be through online. And that's how you're going to spread beyond borders. So now I do all these things online. And this year we've all had, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but most of us have had some really hard times this year.
Mhm.
And for me, it was a reminder that 50 fun things and imagining and looking for those small joys, those little things that light you up, remembering what you're grateful for that you already have in your life. That's what has gotten me out of those pits. So whether you use 50 fun things or you imagine in your own ways or the types of books you read, it's all about imagining possibilities, being grateful, taking care of yourself, honoring and valuing your connections. It's many different parts of it that help you realize, okay, you know what? There are things in my life that are good. There are things in my life that I want to feel this way. And here are some clues for how I can get there. And each person finds out their own journey, but it's a lot of fun too. So yeah, so I'll put those in the links too. Thanks for asking about that.
Yeah. So I guess as we wrap this up, we just want you to realize that networking doesn't necessarily come natural to everyone. Everybody has their own set, and as a homeopath, I see this all the time. And just as somebody who's worked with people in like the wellness sphere, like most of us have these little underlying, like, I'm not quite enough. I don't know if I'm deserving enough to speak up for what I need. I don't know if I'm worthy. We all have that kind of lurking under the surface, and we're all trying to transcend that. So as you're going out there and you're speaking up for yourself and saying what you need, and I think as the comment in the box was like, don't that you should have no shame about it, because by you showing up that way, other people are being able to see that, and then they're going to show up and correspond and get what they need and realize like, hey, that was easier than I thought. And so I really appreciate you reminding everyone that networking doesn't have to be scary, and that it can be really beneficial, and that you can look in multiple different ways to realize that you're actually creating these connections. So thank you so much for your time. And guys, if you watch this and you have more questions, feel free to chat them underneath this video, and Teresa will see them. But yeah, so she's got a couple things happening tomorrow. Both of them tomorrow, or tomorrow and the
Two things tomorrow, and then I have one thing Thursday that might get, we'll see.
we'll see.
But
So
two
there's
things tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we put her website out there. So it's winwinconnects.com. So you'll be able to see the events that she has coming up. She'll put in the direct links for a couple of these other ones, but you can always go there and you can find out more about her and more about what she's got coming up and who she's interacting with, because she's really great about letting everyone know about awesome people, what they're up to, because that's part of who she is. Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Yay!
you. This was a lot of fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yay. All right.
Made
Well,
it easy.
yeah. So we will be back next week for another Joyful Feminist, but please feel free to ask any questions if you're catching this later to Teresa, or like I said, reach out and check out her website, winwinconnects.com.
Ooh, I have an idea. Connect with
Oh,
me on LinkedIn
oh, connect with
and
her
say
on
that
LinkedIn.
you saw me talking with Mary, the energy alchemist, and let's
Yeah.
connect there. And who knows where our
Perfect.
wide connection will go.
Wonderful. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.